Hello, everyone. Well, I think we're just about ready to get started here. If anyone can't hear me, can you please find the chat icon at the bottom and perhaps send us a message and let us know if something isn't working. Otherwise, we'll get started here. So my name is Tim Curry. I'm director of the journalism program here at King's. And this is an event to talk about two of our programs, the Bachelor of Journalism and the Master of Journalism. So thank you very much for joining us. So we're in the university boardroom here. We are just below the journalism school. And if you could see straight ahead of me, you would see the King's Quad. So our whole university is around this tiny quad. It's spring here. The sun just came out, and we've had a lot of rain this week, but the grass is turning green, and we're hopeful of spring. So if you had a rock, you could actually throw and hit a couple of Dalhousie buildings here. So Dalhousie obviously is a larger university, and the arts buildings are nearby here, but Dal has faculties of engineering and health sciences and law. So the King's experience is the small university experience coupled with a medium-sized university. So we're on a corner of Dalhousie's campus, and you benefit from both environments when you're here. So we've got about 30 minutes for this session. There are two people who are going to join me, Fred Valence Jones, who's going to talk about the Master of Journalism program. Fred teaches the investigative workshop in the Bachelor of Journalism program. He's also one of the leaders in data journalism in Canada. And the second person here is Tara Wigglesworth-Hines, and she is our assistant registrar, and she is the person who handles almost all the applications. So most of your dealings will come through her desk. So you'll have lots of interactions with her. And she'll hear in a minute or two. About King's, before we start here, one of the things to know is that we're on the practical side of journalism education in Canada. So we concentrate on the practice of journalism. There's not a lot of media studies to what we do here. So most of what we do is we teach you how to report. And you don't spend a lot of time in the building that's across the quad there, the library, because the library for our students is courthouse, the legislature, and all of the people in Halifax and Nova Scotia who we ask you to hope you interview a lot of. So we at King's here have a strong reputation for our journalism education, and specifically for sending out students who are ready to work in newsrooms. So as I mentioned, it's the small school experience here at King's. A lot of the relationship you have is of editor and reporter, not like professor and student. So a lot of what you do here is working through stories. So that means pitching stories, working one-on-one on various drafts. So I'm Tim. I'm not Mr. Curry. I'm not Professor Curry. Hopefully not Director Curry. And my door's always open, and that's the way we operate here. Okay, so about the programs. So first of all, the Bachelor of Journalism program. This is a general degree that prepares you to be a multimedia reporter, and we do that in 8 months. So you can take it as a standalone program, or you can take it as the first year of a 2-year MJ, and that's what most of our students do. So we started off with what we call boot camp, and this is 8 weeks of fairly intensive instruction in reporting. So you get instruction in writing, in research, in law and ethics, and in audio and video. But most of the Bachelor of Journalism program is workshops. And these are 6-week workshops, and the structure is unique in Canada because we essentially operate them as working newsrooms for the duration. So one of the required workshops is the news workshop, but you can also take audio and video or long-form narrative writing. And then in the third workshop block, you can take audio documentary, video documentary, investigative, or online features. So I'm just going to share my desktop here, and I'm going to show you a couple of a couple of things here. So if you can see this, this is the signal, and this is probably the best way to understand what we do here at King's. So the signal is our website of student work. And you can find it by going to signalhfx.ca or simply Googling the signal Halifax. And this is the homepage as it looks right now. The main story is take a number, but most of the other stories here are by our second-year students right now. They're just finishing up their reporting assignments, and they are in the four-year program. So the take a number feature was done in our third workshop block and involved many BJ students who looked at this feature on wait times and delays in the healthcare system. And this was one of the biggest packages that we worked on this year. Students in our news workshop in the fall covered a murder trial from start to finish. So it was coincidental that the trial started and finished during the 5-week publication window that we had. And we were the only news outlet in Halifax covering this murder trial at the time. Our students cover the legislature. So this picture here shows a couple of our students down at Province House interviewing a cabinet minister with some of the other media reporters in Halifax. And but not everything we do is hard news. So our audio students also do reports for community radio located at Dalhousie University, but they also have a podcast. And this particular item is an episode that they did on love and romance for Valentine's Day. So I encourage you to take a look at this. And of course, you can find all of our audio content on iTunes. You can also take a look at YouTube and take a look at the work of our video workshop. So most of the work we do is in the form of YouTube Lives, but we're straddling older broadcast formats and like I say, the newer sort of live event format. So our students are still doing the traditional 90-second video pieces, but we prepackage it and do it live. But the goal when you're here at King's is to graduate with a portfolio of work. So hopefully by the time you graduate, you will have a whole bunch of stories in the signal, and you can click on your byline and see all of the work you've done. So we hope you take this to a career in journalism, but a lot of our students go to careers in other disciplines. So you can take evidence of excellent writing to any careers that look for good writers, good researchers, good critical thinkers, and you'll have a whole host of video, audio, social media skills that you can take to the workplace. So I'll finish up here. We're really proud of our graduates, and I'll just mention two of them here. Sofia Ortega was in our BJ program 2 years ago. And she she graduated and freelanced with the Associated Press in Mexico, where she's from. And this story is about a number of alarming fireworks accidents in one Mexican city. And Sofia went on to do our MJ as well. And this story here is by Angel Moore, and she graduated just this past year, and she went on to a full-time job at Aboriginal People's Television Network, APTN, and this story is about a bunch of, one of stories that she did a series of reports on about protests over plans to build a natural gas storage facility on what is claimed to be ceded Mi'kmaq territory. So that's probably enough about me, and perhaps time to move on to Fred Valence Jones. So Fred, you want to slide over here and talk a bit about the MJ? You might want to come close to the mic here. A couple of people are saying that it's a little bit echoey, so I'm going to ask you to speak fairly directly in there and do that.
All right. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for coming out tonight, coming out to your computer, and to hear this discussion about our Master of Journalism and our Bachelor of Journalism program. Kind of excited to be here with you tonight. So the MJ runs for 10 months. So if you take the BJ, as Tim mentioned, that would finish up in about April with your internship. And then you would have about a month and a half off, and you come back in June when we start your Master of Journalism Studies. This is a program that it's hands-on just the same way as the BJ program is, just at a kind of higher, more intensive level, you might say. You know, we get a little more into some of the digital mobile reporting techniques in depth that we don't in the BJ program, and then we will spend a lot of time talking about data and investigative journalism, which are two sort of in-demand skills today in Canada. The emphasis is definitely on hands-on learning all the way through. Again, as Tim said, we're not a sort of theoretical school so much as we're going to teach you what it's like to be a journalist and how to be a journalist. Now, you might wonder, what's this data journalism thing? Well, if you think about it, data it has multiplied in its quantities to the point now where there's more data produced in a single day on all the social media networks, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the others, and we pretty much had information in the entire world prior to the computer revolution. So we're going to show you how you can actually use this data for stories, to get stories that nobody else will get. And you can't really, in the end, understand our world if you can't understand data at all. The program finishes up with your professional project, which is a sort of a major piece of journalism that you'll do over the winter term. Now, the nice thing about that is it's not residential at that point, so you can be anywhere. You could be, as one of our students is here in BC. You could be in Newfoundland, or you could be here in Halifax. It doesn't really matter. We'll work with you wherever you may be. And I just thought I'd show you a couple of the stories that we've run in the past, in the Signal, that have come from this project. One of them is this one, Out of Reach, by Paige Woodard. So this was about 2 years ago. Paige graduated, and she looked into the lack of availability of sexual assault nurse examiners in rural parts of Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. These examiners are people who, you know, if there's a sexual assault, can gather necessary and crucial evidence near the time, can be used in a later court trial. Trouble is, if you live in a smaller rural community far from a big city, you may not be able to access that service at all. Another of our students, Drew May, graduated just this past year, so a year ago, and he's now working at the Brandon Sun. And he looked into the long saga of polluted water in the community of Harrisfield, and that's just south of Halifax. In Nova Scotia, a lot of communities rely on groundwater, on wells, and so when it's contaminated, this can have serious impacts on people's health. So we've actually had a couple of students work on this in the last couple of years. Now we're actually getting set to roll out our professional projects for this year. So one of them is going to be an absolute page turner that everyone's going to want to read, and that's about the problems with Nova Scotia Power and all of the blackouts. Another one that we're hoping to tell is one about the difficulty of accessing pediatric care in remote areas of British Columbia. And as I mentioned, you can be anywhere you want. So that's Colin Slark, who's now actually in BC doing that. The MJ actually has a really strong record of placing graduates in really neat jobs. And just today, in fact, two of our grads from 2015, Valerie Wallet and Niall Shahab, collaborated on a story that you may have seen on the CBC, which blows the lid off the so-called sharing economy of Airbnb. And it turns out that a lot of these Airbnbs are actually run by people who work for big corporations, and they're not actually one-off hosts at all. Not that there aren't lots of these one-off hosts, but there's a surprising number of these. So this was the English version that Valerie did. And then on the French side, this is the story that Niall did, and this uses some advanced coding techniques. So you can see as you scroll down the story how more information appears. Now this is all in French, but I understand that there's actually going to be an English version of this story coming shortly. couple other grads quickly before we move on to Tara from the registrar's office. This is a story that Alexander Kwan did a couple of years ago for our program, and notice that we have an ad blocker and Global doesn't seem to like that. But basically, Alex got 6 years of data on restaurant inspections and discovered restaurants not being inspected for years and years and years, with obvious implications for your health. And finally, Martha Troyan, she graduated a few years ago, and she's become one of Canada's top Indigenous journalists. And she worked on the missing and murdered Indigenous women's story for the CBC, built a huge database there. And this also worked on this story for Vice, which talked about the water crisis in Indigenous communities in Canada. So the if I could just reach this, it's fun. There we go. Got the mouse cord now freed up. We're going to turn things over now to Tara from the registrar's office, who's going to talk to you, I guess, about some of the more nuts and bolts of applying for the program.
Process of applying, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Fred. Hi, everyone. My name is Tara, and I'm the Assistant Registrar for Admissions here at the University of King's College. As Tim mentioned earlier, if you decide to apply for King's, or if you have applied for King's, your application will come across my desk, and I will work very closely with the School of Journalism and the faculty to assess your applications and make decisions on your file, hopefully in a very timely manner. I don't have any screen sharing things here, so it's just going to be me talking, but I'm going to give you a brief overview of the admission requirements and procedures for the Bachelor of Journalism and the Master of Journalism program. For those who have already applied and have gone through the process, this will be quick, but for those who are thinking of applying this year still, or possibly planning ahead for next year, this might be helpful information. So the Bachelor of Journalism program, the one-year program, is available for students who have a 3-year or 4-year undergraduate degree in any discipline other than journalism. We normally, when we assess your applications, we're assessing your last 2 years of full-time academic study. So we're not using the very start of your undergraduate degree. We're usually looking at the last 2 years of study. And we're looking at approximately a 2.7 or a 3.0 GPA. That doesn't guarantee admission, but that gives you a guideline. So if your marks are a little lower at the beginning of your undergraduate career, it might not affect your GPA when we're assessing your application. We require, for the Bachelor of Journalism program, we require the standard admission documents, but we do require one extra piece from you, and that's a 1,000-word journalism sketch. And that sketch should outline your interest in studying journalism, whether it's to be a journalist, your interest in becoming a journalist or not. Your knowledge of the King's journalism program is important. Your academic strengths and weaknesses, any experience you have in the field of journalism, and it should be a well-rounded story about you. As you know, journalism is all about storytelling, so we want to see that you can tell a story. There are some extra pieces you can add, which can only strengthen your application, and that would be a portfolio of work, if you have any experience already in the field, a resume, and any references that you can provide would be very helpful to strengthen your application. The Master of Journalism program is offered jointly between the University of King's College and Dalhousie University. As Tim mentions, it's next door, it's within throwing distance. We have two programs. We have the 10-month program, the direct entry into the 10-month program. And this normally requires an applicant who has a 4-year journalism degree already, or the equivalent. And when I say equivalent, I mean an undergraduate degree and maybe an advanced diploma in journalism, or possibly an undergraduate degree and extensive full-time work experience in the field already. So that is the 10-month program that usually starts in June. We also have the 2-year stream, which requires you to have a 4-year undergraduate degree in any discipline. And this program starts off with a Bachelor of Journalism 1 year that Tim spoke about, and then the 10-month program, which Fred spoke about as well. This program requires a 3.0 GPA, so it's a little higher than the 1-year Bachelor of Journalism, But again, we look at the last 2 years of full-time academic background and not necessarily the first couple years of your studies. So keep that in mind. Our admission GPA calculation may be different than what you can come up with on your end. The Master of Journalism program has a little more extensive application process. It again requires the standard documents like the application and the transcripts, but we also require a portfolio of work, 2 references, preferably 1 academic and 1 professional. So a portfolio, 2 references, and a personal statement. So those are required, not optional for the Master of Journalism. So our next intake is actually September 2019. We still are accepting applications for the Bachelor of Journalism 1 year and the Master of Journalism 2-year stream. So if you haven't applied already, we welcome your application, and I can work with you through the application process to make sure we can get things in on time. We also at King's, outside of the admission process, we do have an entrance scholarship and entrance bursary program. The entrance scholarship program, the deadline was actually February 15th for this coming September. So that application process the deadline has passed. Most of the scholarships have been awarded, the first round anyway. If you do have any financial need at all, we encourage you to think about submitting a bursary application, because the bursary, entrance bursaries are based solely on financial need. So if you think you have any need at all, we encourage you to submit that application. And that application the deadline isn't actually till May 31st, so there's still quite some time to submit one if you haven't already. An email will be coming out to the applicants who have already applied, and that will be going out in the very near future. But you can find that application online at ukings.ca. If there are any questions about what I've just said or spoke about, feel free to ask in the chat session next, or if you think of questions after this session, you can always email admissions@ukings.ca.
Excellent. Yeah, so it's question time. So we might ask you back here, Tara, but perhaps Fred, you want to join us and answer any questions. So everyone should see the chat icon at the bottom of your screen there if you click on it, and please ask away. All right, here's one here. So the question is, with regard to the meet and greet tour, is there information about the master's programs? Not on the meet and greet tour, no. That is focused largely for the undergraduate students. So we have a 4-year Bachelor of Journalism program for students coming out of high school, and that school is largely targeted to those students. But certainly if I'm going to be in Winnipeg this weekend at the Canadian Association of Journalists Conference, so if anyone here is from Winnipeg, let's meet. Another question here. Oh.
No, I was just going to say, although the meet and greet tour is focused at the undergraduate level, the people from the campus who are attending are Yolana Wassersag, who's the head of student recruitment, Katie Merwin, who is the dean of students, and the president, Bill. And if you want to get a feel for campus life, we encourage you to go, definitely, and take advantage of that.
Okay. The next question is, what are some of the different career paths besides journalism that people have taken after graduating? Well, that's a pretty long list. I mean, typically our students, have excellent communication skills. So careers that would take them into being a researcher, into being a consultant or an analyst. A number of our students end up at non-governmental organizations, think tanks. Certainly, a lot of our students end up in public relations and marketing. I mean, those are huge fields that draw on almost all of the skills that we give. So we train our students for journalism specifically, but a lot of our students will end up in those fields as well.
Probably the most interesting one that I can think of, actually, that goes beyond what Tim mentioned, is one of the former students who is now a senior executive assistant in the Manitoba government, went to work for the premier there, and now is doing that kind of work. So that's a job that requires the kind of research and articulation that he learned here at King's.
Absolutely. Next question. When is the deadline for accepting an offer for admission to the master's program?
Yeah. Well, I can answer that. If you've been admitted to the one-year Bachelor of Journalism or the two-year master's program, that stream, and you've been admitted before April, the deadline to pay that deposit is the 15th of May. Anybody who's admitted after that point, we have a rolling acceptance date. So it's usually 3 weeks after you receive your letter.
Good. So the next question, is the master's stream an option for someone with a previous graduate degree, but not specifically journalism? So yes, but if it isn't a journalism degree, normally people would take the 2-year MJ option. Yeah.
There's a second part to that question.
We do require people for the 1-year MJ to have a strong background in journalism. We assume that people are going to bring fairly substantial reporting skills as a starting point for that program. The second part of that question was if someone's interested in non-newsroom type of journalism, is this a suitable, perhaps long-form documentary? Is this a suitable program? We probably suggest students do the BJ program if they're interested, certainly in audio and video documentary, because we have those specific workshops in that program. The Master of Journalism is focused largely on investigative, well, it is focused on investigative and text-based data techniques. So, so there isn't much of an opportunity to do video and audio documentaries in the master's program. Next question. I'm a working journalist. Unfortunately, I can't push the pause button to pursue a master's. Any low residency MJ options planned for the future?
MFA.
Yeah, well, we have just the program for you, but it's not a specific journalism program. So our second program, graduate program, is called the Mfa and Creative Nonfiction. And this is a graduate program for students who want to write a nonfiction book. So this is a limited residency program. These students are on campus here at King's for only 2 weeks a year, and that's during the summer. And then they do a 1-week second residency in either New York or Toronto, and that happens on alternating years. The rest of the program, students are working with mentors to prepare a manuscript for a nonfiction book that we hope that those students would take to a publisher. So if I could take you upstairs, I'd show you our bookcase, which now has a roster of books published by students in that program, and it's only about 5 years old.
We have had some students actually pursue the MJ sort of in a part-time way, but you can't avoid having to attend classes during the day, and it is a kind of exception to the rule as opposed to the way we normally run it. But you know, we have sort of accommodated students in the past who wanted to sort of work or do other things while they were finishing their degree.
Question from Andrea here. Hello, does the internship for the Bachelor of Journalism program end in April? Yes, it does. It starts in generally the last couple of days of March and lasts 4 weeks. So our students will be finishing those up next week, I believe, first couple of days of May. And that's in the BJ program only. We don't have an internship in the MJ program, but like I said, most students take the take the BJ as part of a 2-year MJ program. Any other questions? Goodness, and it's exactly, well, it's, this clock's a little bit fast on the computer, but it's we're about 2 minutes before 7. So
I have a couple things I probably should mention before we sign off. Just
absolutely, in case any more questions. Yeah, go. Sure.
So just a couple things, because there are a number of people who have applied and have been admitted as part of this webinar, and other people who hoping are thinking of applying. If you have been admitted and you haven't paid your admission deposit, keep in mind that the deadline to confirm your admission to King's is May 15th. If for some reason that date doesn't work with you, please feel free to touch base with me directly, and we can have a conversation and see what we can do. For those who have been admitted, you should have received an email from my colleagues in academic services on April 23rd. They sent an email to your personal email account, not your university email, and it outlines your next steps and how to register for your courses this June and this September. So if you haven't seen that yet, you might want to check your junk mail or your folder and register for courses whenever you can. Another mention, just remember that if you have financial need to submit a bursary application, because there is money available for incoming students. And for those who haven't applied and are thinking of coming this September, or would like to attend this September, just keep in mind that our deadline for the Bachelor of Journalism one-year program and the two-year stream, the Master of Journalism two-year stream, the deadline is June 1st. So that's actually coming up quite quickly. So if you have any questions about the process afterwards, feel free to touch base. And for those of you who are thinking ahead and planning for maybe September 2020 or the year September 2020, applications aren't available yet. They open in early October. So don't apply using the application that is available right now, because it's not for the right year. So applications will be available in early October, usually around the 15th. If you are an international applicant, keep in mind that we have a very quick turnaround time for requiring all your documents. So the applications open on around October 15th, but the deadline is December 31st. And we have such a tight deadline because of the length of time it usually takes to assess an application, but also if you are admitted, it's quite a long process for you to get your study permit. Paperwork all completed and approved. So it's really an early deadline to hopefully benefit you guys in the end. And if you're thinking of applying next year, try to apply before February 15th, because that is our early deadline, but also the deadline so we can assess you for scholarships.
And Simon's asking, are there any additional scholarships for next year? And yeah, I mean, we awarded most of our scholarships, but there are some we haven't yet. Mm-hmm. So there are a couple there that we left for the later applicants. So please do apply. And as well, some people don't claim their scholarships, obviously. So absolutely. Madeline's asking, is there any information online about the cost for the 10-month masters? Yes, there is. Cost for the 10-month masters, there is a tuition calculator on the website. That's ukings.ca/journalism, and find the link to the Master of Journalism program, and the tuition and fee calculator should walk you through the drop-down menus of selecting a journalism program, and then a graduate program, and then the one-year master program there, which should give you that cost estimate there.
Mm-hmm. And there's always the opportunity to visit campus if you want to visit the School of Journalism, or if you have any questions after we end the session. Admissions@ukings.ca is the place you want to reach out to.
Yeah, so make sure you follow us on Twitter and Facebook. That gives you a sense of what's going on in the school. And like I mentioned, we're pretty cash here. So find our email addresses, the three of us, on the website, and we're happy to answer any questions you have going forward. We'll do the best we can to find answers. So let me just make sure there are no more questions. I do not believe there are any questions in the list there. So we're just a couple of minutes over here. So let's keep to our deadline, shall we? That's a good journalistic value. And we'll wrap it up here. But again, please follow up with any questions. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.